What's the role of the military in this situation today? If America has been captured by enemies domestic, the Al Capones, if Chicago is now not just running Chicago, but running the whole country, well, it's an internal problem. Police are used internally. Military is to foreign enemies. We don't use, with the posse comitatus laws, we don't use the military against American citizens, except in certain very limited situations. If a foreign enemy has breached the wall, has got to a certain point, and then the nation, the republic, the Constitution is under threat, and the policing is not capable of repulsing that threat, of protecting the citizenry, the military can be used under, guard rules and governors, etc., against a threat, be it a natural disaster or an invading army, such as what's about to happen down on the Mexican-Texas border, Mexican-Arizona border, Mexican-California border, with all these immigrants coming up from Guatemala right now. With an external threat, now the military can have to take action. But let's think about, it's not just what's happened in the vote machines inside of America. Where was the threat originally? President Trump, when he was still candidate Trump, before he won in 2016 and then took office in 2017, he was attacked. He was attacked by British intelligence and by a banking cartel working out of the City of London with a false dossier saying that the Russians had compromised Trump in his business dealings, and then were promoting him to become president of the United States, and secretly attacking people that were enemies of Trump in his campaign so that he could become the victor in the election here in America. And then that the Russians, by controlling Trump with this secret sex tapes, this secret knowledge of what he did with prostitutes in Russia, pissing on the bed that Obama had slept in, and all of this nefarious stuff, that the Russians had some leverage over President Trump and could use it to get Trump to do things in a way that favored Russia. And so this Russian dossier was put together by these foreign entities with foreign interests outside the United States in the City of London, the banking city, against candidate Trump. And by the way, that piece of shit, that lying piece of shit Halper, Halper is the guy, he worked in the Reagan administration. He was essentially a spy inside the Reagan administration for George H.W. Bush, former head of CIA before he became vice president. And what you haven't heard, except probably from me, is that he was the banking side of Iran-Contra. He's the unindicted co-conspirator on Iran-Contra. The money and gun running operation, which President Reagan said happened under his watch, but was not fully understood or known by him, but he had to take responsibility for it when he did his national press conference out of the Oval Office. Who was actually running that? That was George H.W. Bush, former head of CIA. And the banker on Iran-Contra was Halper. Well, because Halper was an unnamed co-conspirator, unindicted co-conspirator during Iran-Contra, he skates free. Where does he go? He goes over to London. And then he gets dual British citizenship, not just U.S., but dual British citizenship. And he's a professor at Cambridge. And from Cambridge, he's also providing advisory role, serving an advisory role to Department of Defense here in the U.S. and looking at foreign policy and all sorts of stuff, getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars from the U.S. government for his advisory role. And what did Halper do? He's the one that came up with the plot to try to use a honeypot, a young female, to entice George Papadopoulos to betray his wife and become, complicit in some spying activity and taint President-elect or at that time candidate Trump on Russian collusion, and to paint a picture of him that wasn't true. Halper came up with that plot. Halper is the one that was behind the scenes manipulating the ideas of creating the idea of a Russian collusion project with Trump to get Trump elected, that he was sold out to Russian masters. He came up with that whole lying scam on foreign soil. This is a person with both American and British citizenship because he moved over there to Cambridge after he escaped any kind of exposure during Iran-Contra. And so he's still a threat. When Ollie North and Fawn Hall were destroying records and spiriting them out of the White House in her boots and bra, the records related to the banking, the money, which wasn't ever really raised in Iran-Contra. If you go to the war or the Tower Commission report, doesn't go into those details very far. Why? Because you found Halper there. So Halper survived all of that. And he's still out there loose. He's a missile looking for the next target and getting paid by people inside our government to keep him viable and credible with his job, and getting paid by British MI6 to keep him viable. And then at the critical moment when they need him to help take down a person that might be a threat to their machine, their system, he's paid off, and he comes in, tries to become part of the Trump campaign, tries to become an advisor in the incoming Trump administration, tries to take out various officials, just like Flynn, taking down Flynn because he's a threat to them because he knows where all the bodies are buried. So what happens is these are foreign individuals coming together in an intelligence operation, MI6, they're equivalent to our CIA, MI5, they're equivalent to our FBI, Italian intelligence operatives and facilities where the vote was being cooked and managed by Brit operatives also that were down there in Italy, and NATO allies using Italian and NATO facilities to move the data through satellite systems and into the American system through Canada. All of this work that was being done, that's an external threat. That is a war by another means. It's not a ship on the sea with guns blazing, blasting Volkswagens into America and blowing up buildings 3,000 miles an hour through the air. It's not aircraft. It's not tanks. It's a digital war to capture the flag of your country, to capture control of your country by deciding which leaders get to be in charge. Not the leaders that the American people would vote, but the leaders that these foreign manipulators would vote in, to capture a country in a militarized, digital, war by another means operation. And that's what happened here. The military, the U.S. military, is it supposed to defend America? If the policing action, if Congress, if the courts can't be made to protect America, if they've failed to protect America, if they're so captured that they won't act to protect because of being compromised by one means or another, honeypotted, blackmailed, bribed, murdered, under threat of murder, exposure. If they're so compromised, captured, that they can't act or won't act to protect the Constitution, the contract of the American people with its government, to protect the American people's role as the owners and supervisors of the government, if they can't protect from Congress and the courts that contract with America and are going to let the alligator loose in the kitchen and the rest of the house to destroy the rest of the house, who's left to protect America? And it's my contention that at the moment, on January 19th, the Director of National Intelligence, who runs 17 agencies, 16 intelligence investigative agencies in the U.S., and then the 17th agency is the Office of National Intelligence, the Director of the National Intelligence's office, and he manages the other 16. So 17 total. Another key number. Why? Because got to brand everything they do. 5-sided building. 17. Their worship of Osiris. 17 agencies to run all the investigative functions here in the country, intelligence functions. When the Director of National Intelligence, under executive order from President Trump, from the action from September 12th, I believe it was, 2018, had to report on any foreign interference in the national election within 45 days of the end of the election. Back in December of 2020, that report was supposed to be presented to the president and to the other agency heads. It wasn't, because there was an argument over the content and what the meaning was. And finally, on January 19th, that report was delivered a month late, the day before President Trump was to leave office. And that report showed foreign interference in the U.S. election sufficient to change the outcome of the election. But with 1 day left, having failed all of the intervening time since the November 3rd election, with 1 day left, Congress still failed to act to protect the American people, to do something to protect the vote in America. And then the courts, the Supreme Court, also failed to act to protect the American people against this digital attack on our ability to elect a leader of our choosing. And so 24 hours later, at noon on January 20th, when Joe Biden was sworn in as President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, the leader of the free world, leader of America, up until that moment in time, the military didn't actually have a specific function. They could monitor, they can use military intelligence to monitor all the information, to sift and probe and look at every possible angle of the threat. But our country isn't run by a military junta. It's not run by generals. The generals answer to civilian authorities. That's the way it's laid out. The commander-in-chief is elected by the people to administer the country from the executive office position. The military is subservient to him. However, at the point that Congress and the courts allowed a person to be sworn in and put in a position to take control of the fort, the American defense system against enemies foreign, if they have knowledge, which, by the way, the Director of National Intelligence report provides the information, the knowledge, the data showing that there was foreign interference sufficient to overturn the outcome of the election. If they have data showing that at the military level, and they know that somebody who's not the American people's elected representative is then going to be put into power, they have the obligation to protect us against enemies, foreign and domestic, both of which are in play here. And did not, it would be my contention, functionally, tangibly hand over control of the military, lock, stock, and barrel, to Joe Biden. They instead began an internal investigation to complete and verify and vet and validate the information that was provided in the Director of National Intelligence report, and come independently to their own conclusion. Those military leaders were protecting America and doing their job as they were in position to do. And because there was no missiles flying at America at that exact instant, the need to come to a rapid, instantaneous conclusion at the exact seconds or moment that Joseph Biden was sworn in this agreed upon act by the Supreme Court and the Congress, which the military did not buy into, the leaders in the military did not buy into, then they began their own internal assessment, comparing their intelligence data through their military intelligence methods and means with the Director of National Intelligence conclusions. And as a result of that, over a period of days and weeks, independently came to the conclusion that the interference was sufficient to change the outcome of the election. Now, the way that the Military Code of Justice is written, if a Manchurian candidate or some foreign power has gained control of the helm of the ship, control of the ship of state, gotten in positions of authority and power over the American people in this office, the military is charged first with protecting the Constitution and the Republic. Well, the Constitution, why? Because that's the contract that gives any validity to there being a federal government over the people. That contract, that Constitution, has been violated and broken. The military is charged with protecting it and restoring it. So what happens next is the military doesn't immediately go out and take action. It first protects the people, the nation, the Constitution, the Republic, the states. And then, as quickly as possible, and this is where a lot of people get mixed up. They think that the military should be out there doing arrests right now and taking control and doing stuff. Now, the military's protection, if there was threats that were, some individual threat that could cumulatively threaten the Republic or whatever, they could do arrest. But their primary thing is to restore lawful civilian authorities to control over the country. In the case of the executive office, to restore a lawful civilian president to office. Now, if the result of the election, in this case, could not be known, if it was so screwed up, if the data was so scrambled in all the computer banks somehow that you couldn't tell what the vote was or who did it, then perhaps they'd have to do some kind of a militarily administered revote for the country. But that's not what's going on here. The vote is actually quite knowable. The majority of the states clearly voted decisively for President Trump. The handful of states that were in question that flipped the vote over, that digital data, that 3 o'clock in the morning stopped the count and then put in the new set of numbers and algorithms in place to flip it over. In that forensic analysis of the digital data from this digital attack that's been done, shows clearly that President Trump not just won, but won decisively. A mammoth win. including in those states. So the military has to place the lawful person who won the election in office, not do a revote, just recognize the true outcome of the vote and place that person back in authority. But does the military do that for the whole country or just for its section? As a first step, lawful civilian authority would be recognized by the military as the winner of that election, which in this case was Donald Trump. And that win, with them recognizing that, they hand the reins of power. As Mao said, all power emanates from the barrel of a gun. Who has the biggest gun here? Is it police departments? Is it states, even with their National Guard? Or is it the American military who has the biggest gun? When the military doesn't let President Biden run around on Air Force One, when the military doesn't let President Biden tell him what to do precisely, even if they allow illusions of power and military action to take place. If they're not doing that, it's for a reason. You know, over the White House last couple of days, people have been commenting on the black flag over the White House, just below the American flag, and at a number of other facilities. Well, the black flag, it's a black military POW, missing in action, prisoner of war flag from the Vietnam War era. But these things can have multiple meanings, dual meanings. Why are they flying that flag over the White House right now? Why are they flying it at other facilities right now? It might have some extra meaning. Who's the actual POW at the White House right now? And who's missing in action? There's some games and trolling taking place, and the military, in its role of restoring as quickly as safely possible lawful civilian control first within the military house. Who is the commander-in-chief really supposed to be? Because an enemy attacked us digitally in a digital war against America. Who do they put in office there? And then what does the military do? Once a true, proper, lawful commander-in-chief is in office, in play, then the military answers to the lawful commander. What next? And the lawful commander says, we need to do this and this and this. The military, this isn't a military junta of generals running America. That's a South American banana republic thing, where the only way to get lawful control of the country is for generals to do it, because the crime lords have taken over the presidencies and the payoffs. And, it's the Chicago mob running the country, the New York mob running the country, the New Jersey mob running the country. Here in America, we put the lawful commander-in-chief into office. That's what the military's role would be initially, based on the Military Code of Justice. Restore lawful civilian authority to their command and control position, the lawful operation of the country, the government. Then to look to that lawful commander-in-chief for direction, how to proceed. The military doesn't do the arrests at the direction of generals, except for some instant protection. They look to the president, and then they do what the president's bidding is. Look, suppose you put Trump or any person in president's office, but the courts are corrupt. Congress is corrupt. They're captured. They've already demonstrated that they're a captured operation. You couldn't get to justice in the Justice Department. You couldn't get to a right review of the vote and the voting machines and practices. They wouldn't hear the case. They wouldn't let the states have a case heard about the states saying, hey, the whole country, all of us states are being run roughshod over by a couple of crooked Chicago mob states that are trying to control the outcome for the whole country and the whole world. You got to stop this. And the court says, well, no, we don't have to. And we're not going to do that. You can't get to justice in the Justice Department. What's left? The president can't turn to the courts because the courts have already shown that they're not reliable. They're not working in the American people's lawful interests. They won't do their job. The president can't turn to Congress because Congress is dysfunctional. It's too captured. Too many of the players are compromised. So you can't get there. Why? How did they get compromised? Well, what do you think was going on at Epstein Island? What do you think's been going on at the Standard Hotel and all these other places? What was WikiLeaks all about? These sex clubs, this perversion, this pedophilia, the Podesta brothers. Why are they so pissed off about Assange and WikiLeaks? What's going on there? Because they're sex clubs and worse were being exposed. These hidden manipulations to control our leaders in office all around the world, all around our country. And so you can't get to justice in the Justice Department, and you can't get Congress to work in the interest of the American people because they're interested in their own interests and their buddies' interests, their foreign nationals' interests, their banking, City of London interests. And so what happens next? The only solution, it's a military solution. The new commander-in-chief has to turn back to the military after being put in office and direct the military to go make the arrests. Arrest those people that are compromised, that are working with foreign powers and interests, that didn't safeguard the Constitution, the contract between the American people and its government. And the president directs the military. Take that fucking bunch of shitballs to Gitmo, lock them up, and we'll do our trials there because you can't get to justice in the Justice Department. And that's what's going to happen next.